How this massive ship reached this vast desert is still hard to explain, but when the Air Force saw it on their spy plane's monitor, they had no choice but to examine it. It was breathtaking up close, but when they looked inside, things took a turn for the worse. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. The sun hung low over the desert base where Sergeant Colin and his military peers resided. They were staring at the monitors in front of them, which were directly connected to the camera of highly sophisticated spy plane. Colin was the one operating the small but nimble aircraft. A high spike of nighttime break-ins and unexplained flashing lights in the sky during the darkest hours after dusk had sparked interest of the military. So Colin and his team were ordered to investigate these strange occurrences. But even though the reports kept coming in, there was nothing to see on the plane's aerial feed. Colin had been remote piloting the aircraft for over 3 hours and only spotted mile after mile of empty desert wasteland. The desert storms close to the grounds were fierce, so he couldn't lower the plane by much, but he didn't need to make his conclusion. Colin leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms. "Nothing but sand and more sand," he muttered, when something caught his eye on the screen. "What is that?" he whispered, leaning forward. The rest of the team snapped to attention, eyes locking onto the grainy footage. A dark shape, partially buried in the sand, stood out against the endless dunes. Colin quickly adjusted the drone's altitude by 50 feet, lowering it just a bit for a closer look. The object came into sharper focus, revealing a massive, angular structure. "That's a ship," he said in disbelief. Mark squinted at the screen, frowning. "A ship? Out here? That makes no sense." Mark called in the rest of the crew, who walked in frustrated. Mark tapped a few keys, zooming in further. "That's not just any ship," one of the fellow soldiers pointed out. "It's an aircraft carrier." The room fell silent. An aircraft carrier stranded in the middle of the desert? "The spy plane can't land there," one of the teammates pointed out. "The sand's too loose and winds at that level could knock it over." Mark nodded grimly. They wouldn't get any real answers unless they went there themselves. Colin didn't hesitate. "We have to get out there," he said, standing up. The rest of the team exchanged looks but didn't argue. They were trained for the unexpected, and this certainly qualified. One by one, they moved toward their lockers, preparing their gear for whatever they might find. Mark climbed into the vehicle first, gripping the wheel. "Let's make this fast," he said, revving the engine. With a final check, Colin nodded. "All right," he said, "we move out now." The team took their positions, their faces set with determination. As the transport rumbled to life, dust kicked up behind them, swirling in the hot desert air. Colin kept his eyes on the GPS, guiding Mark through the rough terrain. The vehicle rocked with each bump. Then, a massive shadow appeared on the horizon. As they got closer, the true size of the vessel became clear. The aircraft carrier loomed like a forgotten giant, its rusted hull blending into the sands. It looked as if it had been here for decades. Colin stepped out, the hot wind whipping his face. "This thing has been here a long time," he said. It was as though the ship had simply dropped from the sky. Eventually, they found a ladder leading up the west side. It stretched 60 feet up the ship's exposed surface. The rusted metal looked fragile, but it was the only visible way in. Colin stopped the vehicle. "This is our way in," he said. The others exchanged glances, then gathered their gear. At the top, he pulled himself onto the flight deck and helped the others up. The wide platform stretched out, dotted with a few decaying crates. Colin broke one open. Inside were expired rations from over 25 years ago. This wasn't just some forgotten relic. Mark stepped beside him. "It's worse up here," he muttered. The silence was unnerving. No wind, no animals, just the creak of their boots on rusted steel. About 50 feet ahead, a large opening yawned in the hull. Colin motioned for the team to follow. As they approached, a sound ripped through the silence, a deep, unnatural noise that echoed from within the ship. The team froze. Mark's fingers tapped nervously on his vest. "Did anyone else hear that?" he whispered. The team exchanged uneasy glances. They were trained soldiers, But that sound had shaken them. Turning back wasn't an option. If something was inside, they had to find out. Hesitantly, the team advanced. The opening loomed before them, rusted and jagged. The growl had faded, replaced by silence. Only their footsteps echoed, the metal floor groaning under their weight. As they ventured deeper, the walls closed in and the air thickened. The sound came again, louder this time, followed by a sharp metallic clang. The echo bounced down the hallway like a warning. One soldier muttered a prayer. Colin saw the fear in their eyes, despite their attempts to hide it. "Keep it together," he whispered. But every step brought them closer to danger. Then Mark froze. "I saw something," he whispered. Colin turned. Movement. It crossed that hallway. Colin hadn't seen it, but Mark's voice was tight with fear. Before Colin could react, a shadow flickered. Another darted across the wall. The team held their breath as more shadows danced in the distance. "I believe we're being watched," Mark said, frozen in place. Colin nodded. He'd seen it too now. The shadows weren't random. They were moving, circling. The ship went quiet again. Then, chaos. Dark figures lunged from the shadows. One struck Colin's head. Pain burst through his skull as he hit the ground. Blinking against the dim light, he struggled to understand. Where was he? What had happened? His senses sharpened. He was tied to a chair. Thick ropes cut into his wrists and ankles, locking him in place. Colin turned his head and saw the others, Mark and the rest of the team, all bound the same way. Their eyes flicked around, trying to make sense of the silence. Panic began to set in. Mark spoke up. "Who the hell did this?" Another soldier groaned. "They knocked us out." But who were they? Colin clenched his fists, the rope biting into his skin. "They wouldn't leave us like this. Someone's here." The team called out, demanding answers. No one replied. One of the soldiers thrashed against his restraints. Colin tried too, gritting his teeth, but the knots were expertly tied. Then movement in the shadows. A woman stepped forward, early 60s, sharp features, gray hair. She wore practical clothes and a hardened expression. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady and cold. "My name is Amina." Confused glances passed between the men. "Amina who?" Mark asked. "That's all you need to know," she replied. "I don't trust you yet." Colin shifted. "Why are we here?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gestured to the darkness. Several men stepped forward. They weren't soldiers, but their demeanor was controlled. "Untie their legs," Amina instructed. "Leave their hands." They obeyed. Colin stood stiffly, his hands still bound. The rest of the team rose beside him. "Follow me," Amina said. Her men herded them through a long, rust-streaked corridor. Colin's mind churned. Who was she, and what was this place? The corridor opened into a large room. Monitors lined the walls, showing live feeds of nearby villages. Wires snaked across the floor. People, exhausted, grim, and silent, sat at terminals. Few looked up. A deep growl filled the space, momentarily startling the team. It came from a generator in the corner. Colin exhaled in relief. But that relief faded as he focused on the screens. The villages looked abandoned. Streets empty, vegetation dead. A hollow stillness hung over every image. Mark moved instinctively, but was stopped. "What happened here?" Colin asked Amina. "And who are you?" She didn't respond. Instead, she gave another command. "Put them on the ground." The team was forced down, seated in the center of the room. Colin gritted his teeth but remained silent. Amina stepped closer, her expression unreadable, but her eyes revealed something deeper. Urgency, perhaps even fear. The room was still. "I risk everything by telling you this," she finally said. She looked around at the people behind her. Their faces were unreadable, but intense. This wasn't just about Colin's team. It was something bigger. "But something has to change," she added, her voice quieter now. Colin held her gaze, uncertain where this was headed. "My intuition says I can trust you," Amina said, taking a step closer. "So don't disappoint me, sir." Colin nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He gave his word. He wouldn't do anything to harm her or her people. Amina took a deep breath, her expression darkening. We are on the edge of the Sahara, a place where people have lived in peace for generations, she began. Tribes may have had differences, but we coexisted. Then conflict started. She turned to the monitors. Colin frowned. Then who did it? Amina's eyes locked onto his. Your people, she said. Colin's stomach twisted, but she continued. The reports, the distress calls, they weren't real. We sent them. Mark tensed. You tricked us? Amina nodded. Yes, we needed someone to listen. This ship isn't just our base, it caused everything, and you need to fix it. She explained that over 30 years ago a tribal conflict broke out. The local government asked for U.S. support, but instead of diplomacy, a military ship arrived. Back then, water covered this land. The ship carried soldiers and vehicles, but it was attacked and broke down. As years passed and water dried up, sandstorms buried the vessel. We were hidden, Amina said. But a storm revealed us again. Colin tried to grasp her words. What are you saying? She pointed to the screens. These used to be thriving towns. Now they're lifeless, and it's because of this ship. After the vessel broke down, it leaked oil and chemicals, poisoning the soil. Crops failed. People left. You came to help, Amina said, but your presence did more harm than good. Colin's thoughts raced. He had believed in those old missions, thought they had helped. That can't be true, he said. Amina's gaze was unwavering. Look around. Do they look like liars? Mark glanced at the exhausted civilians hunched over monitors. The truth was undeniable. These people had suffered for a generation because of them. You brought us here, Colin said quietly. Amina nodded. We had to speak on our terms. She stepped closer. Please, leave this land or help us rebuild. Colin stared at her. He had trusted his orders, but now he wasn't sure anymore. He had come seeking a threat, but had found victims. I will help you, he said firmly. Amina studied his face. You will help us? Colin nodded. I can't fix the past, but I can change what happens next. I'll take you to my base. You'll speak to the general. Mark looked uneasy. If command doesn't like this, we're finished. Colin sighed. Can you really walk away from this? Mark hesitated, then shook his head. No, I can't. Amina gave a nod. Then we move, before anyone else finds us. Some of her people hesitated. What if it's a trap? She raised her hand. We have to try. If we don't, nothing changes. The team was untied. They gathered their gear and prepared to leave. Amina rode with Colin, silent but alert. Thank you, she said softly. Don't thank us yet, Colin replied. We don't know how they'll respond. As they entered the base, guards stopped them. We need to see the general, Colin said. After a pause, they were escorted inside. The general looked unimpressed. Colin stepped forward. She has something to show you. Amina placed a drive on the desk. This is real. Your men did this. The general scoffed until the footage began. His face darkened. We thought we were helping, he muttered. We didn't see the cost. Amina's voice was cold. You do now. The general stood. We'll help rebuild, then we'll leave. Weeks later, troops and civilians worked side by side. Removing the ship wasn't easy, but it was done. The soil was cleansed, the villages restored. Amina watched with pride. It's finally home again.